Imagine walking through the quiet countryside of old Windsor, where ivy climbs across red brick walls and a Georgian mansion rises like something out of a fairy tale. This is Woodside, Elton John's private stage away from the spotlight. But just when you think this is the height of luxury, another world opens across the Atlantic. A $25 million Beverly Hills palace with sweeping staircases and sunlit gardens. Tonight, we step inside both homes and discover the rockstar lifestyle like no other. Long before the sequins, before the feathered boas and rhinestone glasses, there was a shy little boy named Reginald Kenneth Dwight, growing up in the modest town of Pinner, Middlesex. On the surface, his childhood looked ordinary. A quiet home, a post-war neighborhood, a boy expected to follow the path of many others. But was there ever really anything ordinary about him? The answer came at the piano. Barely tall enough to reach the keys, Reggie began picking out melodies by ear on his grandmother's upright. Within a year, he could play full waltzes without ever glancing at sheet music. At age 11, he earned a scholarship to the Royal Academy of Music, where teachers whispered about his rare gift. Could it be that this boy, who looked like any other, was destined to change music forever? By his teenage years, Reggie was sneaking into pubs, playing rhythm and blues with a local band called Bluesology. But somewhere inside, he knew the name Reginald Dwight wasn't meant for the big stage. In 1967, inspired by his bandmates Elton Dean and Long John Baldry, he took on a new name, Elton John. A transformation was complete. But would the world notice? They noticed. In 1970, Elton released his self-titled album, featuring a song so simple and pure, it felt like a handwritten love letter. Your Song became an international hit, catapulting him from unknown pianist to global star. And then came the unstoppable run. From 1972 to 1975, he released 7 consecutive #1 albums in the U.S., including Goodbye Yellow Brick Road and Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. No one had ever seen a rise like this. How could one man dominate radio, fashion, and culture all at once? It wasn't just the music, it was the spectacle. Outrageous outfits, glittering glasses, pianos that seemed to roar with life. Elton turned every stage into a kingdom, and he was both the king and the court jester. His shows blurred the line between rock concert and Broadway theater. To millions, he wasn't just a singer. He was an experience. The late 1970s and 80s brought turbulence. Fame and excess collided. There were addictions, personal struggles, and moments when the future seemed uncertain. Yet somehow, Elton always found a way to rise again. With songs like I'm Still Standing and sad songs Say So Much, he reminded the world, and himself, that resilience could be as powerful as melody. Then came the 1990s, and with it, Reinvention. In 1992, Elton and Bernie Taupin signed a record-breaking $39 million contract with Warner Brothers, the largest in music history at the time. But he wasn't chasing charts. He was chasing legacy. Just 2 years later, his collaboration with Tim Rice on Disney's The Lion King produced anthems like Circle of Life and Can You Feel the Love Tonight, introducing him to an entirely new generation. And then, tragedy struck. When Princess Diana, one of Elton's dearest friends, died in 1997, he re-recorded his 1973 ballad, Candle in the Wind. The tribute became the best-selling physical single of all time, moving more than 33 million copies. In that moment, Elton wasn't just a pop star. He was a voice for a grieving world. Even as the decades turned, he never faded. His Las Vegas residencies drew millions. His Farewell Yellow Brick Road tour became one of the highest-grossing tours in history, and in 2023, he closed Glastonbury Festival with a performance so iconic it became the most watched in the festival's history. How many artists could command such relevance half a century after their first hit? Today, with more than 300 million records sold and a career that has outlived countless trends, Elton John stands as one of the most successful musicians in history. Yet his story is not just about sales or fame. It's about transformation, resilience, and reinvention, a life that has constantly pushed beyond limits. And when the lights dimmed after each performance, when the final chord faded into silence, Elton needed somewhere to return. A sanctuary. A place where the legend could simply be a man. That place was, and still is, Woodside. His Georgian mansion in Old Windsor. Mansion in Woodside. Tucked away in the quiet countryside of Berkshire, behind manicured hedgerows and winding lanes, stands a house that seems more like a storybook than a residence. This is Woodside, Elton John's Georgian mansion, his home since 1975. But what makes this estate so extraordinary? Is it just the price tag, an estimated $6 million, or is it the soul within its walls? At first glance, the mansion whispers classic British restraint. Its red brick facade, perfectly symmetrical, framed by crisp white cornices and elegant Georgian columns, gives the sense of tradition and timelessness. Yet, if you dare step inside, the restraint vanishes. Here, the house doesn't whisper, it sings. The first stop? The dining room. Imagine entering a chamber drenched in crimson, where the deep red walls glow under crystal chandeliers. At the center rests a grand mahogany table, polished to a mirror shine, dressed with fresh floral arrangements that seem to bloom eternally. Sitting here doesn't feel like eating a meal. It feels like performing in a royal theater. Who wouldn't want dinner to feel like a scene out of history? From there, the tour takes us into the study, a sanctuary within the sanctuary. Striped red wallpaper wraps around towering mahogany bookcases, while a carved marble fireplace anchors the room with old-world elegance. Porcelain figurines line the shelves like an army of fragile guardians, each placed with military precision. It's a room that could belong to a Victorian novelist, and yet, it belongs to a rock star who redefined flamboyance. Isn't that the beauty of Woodside? That clash between tradition and rebellion? Even the subtle touches speak volumes. Seagrass rugs underfoot soften the stride, their natural fibers breathing warmth into the stately halls. Light oak railings, curated wallpapers, and hidden recesses add detail upon detail, showing us that Elton doesn't just live here, he crafts here. Every corner reflects his passion for turning life into art. But just when you think you've understood the house, Woodside jolts you awake. Tucked behind stately doors is a gym unlike any other. Instead of aristocratic calm, you're hit with raw intensity. Cutting-edge equipment, a massive mural shouting the words, "Kill Deutschland," and an atmosphere that feels more underground club than Georgian manor. Why such a disruptive space inside such a refined home? Perhaps because Elton has always thrived on contradiction, elegance and chaos, refinement and rebellion. The mansion is more than just bricks and mortar. It's a living autobiography. Each room holds a piece of Elton John, the showman, the romantic, the collector, the rebel. The walls echo with decades of private conversations, late-night melodies, and quiet family moments. Think about it. How many songs, how many dreams were born inside these very walls? Outside, the estate continues its tale. Sweeping gardens, ivy climbing the brick, and hidden corners offer Elton the rarest of luxuries: privacy. Here, away from flashing cameras and sold-out arenas, he can walk in silence, hear the crunch of gravel underfoot, and be simply Elton, not Sir Elton John, global superstar. Isn't that perhaps the greatest treasure of all? Woodside is not just a mansion. It is Elton John, translated into architecture. Bold yet refined, traditional yet daring, private yet theatrical. And while this home remains his sanctuary in England, it is not the only castle in his kingdom. Because across the Atlantic, under the California sun, Elton built another dream, a palace of Mediterranean luxury in Beverly Hills. Mansion in Beverly Hills. Its Hollywood grandeur at full volume, a stage set under the California sun. But what makes this $25 million estate so breathtaking? Let's step inside. Perched high above the city, the Mediterranean-style home greets you with a grand arched facade that feels less like a residence and more like a palace. As you pass through its gates, the first thing you notice is the sheer scale. Sprawling gardens that tumble down sunlit terraces, framed by palms swaying in the breeze. Could this be a retreat? Or is it a statement? A reminder that Elton John has mastered both continents, both lifestyles. Inside, the drama begins immediately. The sweeping staircase, curved like a ribbon of marble, commands attention from the moment you step into the foyer. Light pours through tall windows, bouncing across polished floors, making the entire house feel alive with warmth. 10 bedrooms and nearly 24 bathrooms sprawl across the estate, each one echoing Elton's love for comfort wrapped in extravagance. The living areas blend Mediterranean coziness with Elton's flair for color. Think bright fabrics draped over plush sofas, bold artwork splashed across the walls, and 9 fireplaces flickering like performers on stage. The library whispers sophistication. Shelves of rare books, sunlight filtering across polished wood. But just a few steps away, a private cinema room pulls you into another world with velvet seating and sound that swallows you whole. Isn't it exactly what you'd expect from a rock star who spent decades shaping soundtracks for generations? The dining room feels built for banquets, where conversations stretch late into the night. Nearby, a wine cellar holds treasures of another kind, bottles collected not for show but for evenings shared with friends. And then, beyond heavy doors, lies the family room, the beating heart of the home. Here, Elton is not Sir Elton John. He's simply a husband, a father, a man surrounded by laughter and love. Step outside, and the house unveils its crown jewel, a massive outdoor swimming pool glistening beneath the California sky. Surrounded by lounge chairs, sculpted hedges, and shaded terraces, it's the kind of space that invites long summer days and glittering night parties. Arched walkways lead out to open-air patios, where Elton and David Furnish can host friends with the city lights sparkling just beyond the hills. It's no wonder the mansion feels like a Mediterranean resort. Every corner, from the arched windows to the ornate balconies, blends Hollywood glamour with European soul. It's a perfect reflection of Elton himself, global, theatrical, and always larger than life. So how do these two worlds, the Georgian restraint of Woodside and the sun-soaked opulence of Beverly Hills, fit together? Perhaps the answer lies in Elton's nature. He is a man of contrasts, an English knight who thrives under American spotlights, a traditionalist who lives for reinvention, a global star who still longs for sanctuary. And yet, his story doesn't end with mansions. Because between Windsor and Beverly Hills, Elton keeps something else close to his heart: horsepower, precision, and the thrill of the open road. Step into Elton John's garage, and it doesn't feel like storage. It feels like a private showroom. Each vehicle is a reflection of a different side of him: the father, the knight, the rebel. But which car tells his story best? Cars. The Audi RS6 Avant. At first glance, you might think this is just another wagon. But under the hood, it hides a twin turbocharged V8 with nearly 600 horsepower. It leaps from 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds, yet still has space for family luggage. Why does Elton drive it? Because it balances two worlds: the family man who takes his sons on countryside escapes, and the superstar who craves speed. Isn't that the essence of Elton? Practicality dressed in glitter? The Bentley Flying Spur. Now, picture quiet domination. That's the Bentley. Step inside, and you're wrapped in butter-soft leather, polished walnut veneers, and the kind of silence that feels sacred. Beneath the calm, a W12 engine waits to roar. This is the car of an English knight, regal, poised, understated. For Elton, the flying spur is more than transport. It's a reminder that he doesn't need to shout to be heard. His presence alone speaks volumes. The McLaren 570S, and then the wild card. The 570S isn't about comfort, it's about adrenaline. With its carbon fiber chassis, signature dihedral doors that lift like wings, and 560 horsepower pushing you into the seat, it's a pure rush. Why does Elton own it? Because deep down, he's still the performer, still the rebel who loves to shock. The McLaren is his encore, a machine that screams Rockstar every time its engine roars. Each car tells us something different. The Audi shows us Elton's grounded practicality. The Bentley reflects his nobility. The McLaren, his untamed fire. Together they form a fleet that mirrors the man himself, balanced, royal, and forever daring. But Elton John's wealth isn't just measured in engines or estates. Behind the wheel or behind the piano, his fortune comes from decades of brilliance, bold deals, and record-breaking success. So how did he build the empire that funds this lifestyle? How much is a lifetime of music, reinvention, and resilience really worth? For Elton John, the answer in 2025 is staggering, an estimated $650 million. But what's behind that fortune? Is it simply record sales, or something far more intricate? A symphony of income streams built across 5 decades? The turning point came in 1992. Elton and his lyricist Bernie Taupin signed a $39 million deal with Warner Brothers Records, the largest advance in music history at the time. To many, that number was jaw-dropping. But to Elton, it wasn't about a check. It was about freedom, the chance to create without limits. That one contract alone laid the foundation for decades of financial power. Touring became another goldmine. His Farewell Yellow Brick Road tour, launched in 2018 and stretching across continents, shattered records to become one of the highest-grossing tours in history. Night after night, stadiums filled, tickets sold out in minutes, and the numbers skyrocketed into hundreds of millions. How many artists, even in their 70s, can claim to outshine stars half their age? Elton could. Then came the soundtracks. Disney's The Lion King alone transformed his earnings. With songs like Can You Feel the Love Tonight, he didn't just capture hearts, he captured royalties for life. Add to that the stage adaptations, re-releases, and new generations discovering the music, and the numbers only kept climbing. Las Vegas added another layer. His residencies at Caesar's Palace, including the million-dollar piano, weren't just concerts. They were spectacles, tailor-made for the city of excess. Reports suggest Elton was earning over $500,000 per show. Multiply that by hundreds of performances, and you begin to see why his wealth feels limitless. All of it adds up to the extraordinary figure we see today. Yet, what makes Elton's fortune so fascinating isn't just the sheer scale, it's what he chooses to do with it. Unlike so many stars who hoard their millions, Elton has consistently given his away, funneling hundreds of millions into charity. So yes, he may be worth $650 million. But perhaps the truer question is this: how many lives has that wealth transformed? The answer takes us into a chapter of his life where money isn't about mansions or cars. It's about hope, healing, and humanity. Philanthropy. In the early 1990s, Elton lost 2 people who shaped his world. Ryan White, the teenage AIDS activist who became a symbol of innocence and resilience, and Freddie Mercury, his close friend and fellow music legend. Their deaths weren't just personal tragedies, they were wake-up calls. In a world paralyzed by fear and stigma, who would step forward? Elton answered, "I will." In 1992, he founded the Elton John AIDS Foundation. At a time when even saying the word AIDS was taboo, Elton not only said it, he shouted it. What began as a promise to honor friends quickly became one of the most respected charities in the world, raising over $600 million and funding programs across 55 countries. But numbers alone don't tell the story. What matters is the lives saved, the silence broken, the dignity restored. Every year, he turns his fame into a spotlight for causes others ignore. His Oscar viewing party, launched in 1993, became more than a Hollywood gathering. It became a fundraising powerhouse, generating more than $200 million for HIV/AIDS programs. Cameras flashed, celebrities mingled, but at the heart of it was always one mission: to fight stigma and bring hope. Then there's the legendary white tie and tiara ball, hosted right at Woodside. Imagine glittering guests arriving under starlit skies, greeted by truffle soufflés, fine wines, and art auctions that raise millions in a single evening. In one unforgettable year, a Rolls-Royce Phantom and a Tracy Emin artwork alone brought in $800,000. By the end of the night, Elton had raised $3.5 million, and every cent went to the cause. Isn't that the definition of using privilege for purpose? But Elton's compassion isn't bound by borders. In 2023, amid the war in Ukraine, his foundation donated $125,000 through United 24 to purchase biochemical analyzers, ensuring HIV patients continued receiving treatment despite chaos. It was a quiet act, but one that rippled into thousands of lives. Beyond AIDS, Elton and his husband David Furnish co-founded the Elton John Charitable Trust in 2007, supporting over 100 charities worldwide, from arts and education to healthcare and social justice. In 2014, they launched the Elton John Sports Fund, giving young athletes access to training in more than 50 sports. Because to Elton, uplifting people isn't limited to music or medicine. It's about unlocking potential in every form. Even during the global pandemic, Elton didn't retreat. From his own backyard, he performed "I'm Still Standing" for the One World Together at Home concert, raising millions for the World Health Organization's COVID-19 response. It wasn't just a song, it was a message. Resilience endures, even in the darkest hours. For all his record-breaking tours and glittering mansions, Elton often says his proudest achievement isn't a hit song or a sold-out stadium. It's the foundation that carries his name, the causes that carry his heart. His legacy isn't only written in platinum records, it's written in the millions of lives touched by his compassion. And yet, beyond the galas, donations, and global initiatives, lies another story. Because while Elton John has always given to the world, his most intimate gifts are reserved for his family. Who is Elton when the spotlight fades, when he steps away from the stage and into the quiet of his own home? Personal life. The answer begins in 1993, at a quiet dinner party where Elton met David Furnish, a Canadian advertising executive turned filmmaker. What started as casual conversation grew into something deeper, a partnership built on humor, honesty, and shared purpose. Against the backdrop of Elton's extraordinary life, David brought balance. Could it be that the rock star who once lived at full speed had finally found his anchor? Their love story became history-making. On December 21, 2005, when the Civil Partnership Act came into effect in the UK, Elton and David were among the first to formalize their union, holding their ceremony at Windsor Guildhall, just minutes from Woodside. Then, 9 years later to the day, when same-sex marriage was legalized, they said, "I do" again, this time as husbands. Elton himself would later say, There's a big difference between calling someone your partner and calling them your husband. Husband says everything. Together, they built a family that redefined what modern love looks like. In 2010, their first son, Zachary Jackson LaVon Furnish John, was born via surrogate in California on Christmas Day, a gift Elton described as the greatest of all. 3 years later, their second son, Elijah Joseph Daniel, completed the picture. For Elton, fatherhood wasn't just a chapter. It was a rebirth. "I've had everything in life," he once admitted, "but nothing compares to waking up to my sons." Today, at Woodside and in their Beverly Hills mansion, Elton's daily life looks very different from his roaring tours of the past. Evenings often belong to his children, whether it's helping with homework, enjoying poolside afternoons in California, or quiet dinners that would once have been unimaginable in his whirlwind youth. Beyond his immediate family, Elton also extends his role as a mentor and protector. He is godfather to some of pop culture's most famous children: Sean Lennon, Brooklyn and Romeo Beckham, Damian Hurley, proving that his loyalty to friends runs as deep as his devotion to music. To these families, Elton isn't just a superstar. He's Uncle Elton, the man who shows up, listens, and quietly offers guidance. What emerges is a portrait of a man who has lived two lives, one under the blinding light of fame, and one in the quiet glow of family. And perhaps that's his greatest reinvention. Not the costumes or the chart toppers, but the transformation from a global icon to a husband and father, deeply rooted in love. So, when we look at Elton John's lifestyle, the Windsor estate, the Beverly Hills palace, the luxury cars, the hundreds of millions, it all points back to this truth. His greatest treasures aren't material. They are the people who walk beside him when the music fades. Now we want to hear from you. If you could step inside just one of Elton's homes, would you choose the timeless Georgian sanctuary in Windsor or the Mediterranean palace in Beverly Hills? Share your thoughts below, because every legend invites us to reflect on our own story.